All right, so today, let's take a deep dive into sovereign wealth funds.
Okay.
You know, those giant investment funds that countries run.
Right.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, what do those even have to do with me?
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, get this. The U.S. might be setting up its very own SWF for the very first time ever.
It's true. And yeah, it is a pretty big deal.
Really?
Potentially, we're talking trillions of dollars
Wow.
being invested by the U.S. government.
Okay.
To give some perspective, Norway's sovereign wealth fund, which gets its money from oil,
Hmm.
it's sitting at a crazy like $1.7 trillion right now.
That's a lot of money.
It is. It's
Yeah.
bigger than like the whole GDP of lots of countries.
Okay, wow, that's a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
So, okay, for like those of us who need a quick refresher,
Sure.
what exactly a sovereign wealth fund and how would
Yeah.
one even work in the U.S.?
Okay.
Which, let's be honest, isn't exactly known for having like extra cash lying around.
Right. You're right. The U.S. doesn't exactly have the kind of budget surplus that usually funds these things.
Right.
So traditionally, countries with big surpluses from, exporting natural resources,
Yeah.
like oil in Norway's case, they take some of those profits and put them into a sovereign wealth fund.
Huh.
Think of it like a huge national savings account
Okay.
designed for long-term investing
Right,
to
let's
help
see,
out
see.
future generations.
So it's like a giant piggy bank.
Yeah.
But instead of just holding on to cash, it's actually investing in different things to try to make that wealth even bigger.
Exactly. And those investments, they can vary a lot,
Okay.
from stocks and bonds to real estate infrastructure, even private companies. It's a whole range.
So that makes sense for like a country like Norway. But the U.S. is in a totally different situation.
Yeah,
We're running a deficit, not a surplus.
right.
So where would the money for this U.S. sovereign wealth fund even come from?
That's the million-dollar question,
Oh,
and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The current proposal suggests funding the SWF through a mix of selling off government assets, things like land and buildings and other stuff the government owns,
Okay.
plus using tariff revenue.
Wait, selling off like national assets?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty drastic.
Yeah,
Is that even legal?
it is legal.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely a bold move.
I mean, wouldn't that be like selling the family silver to gamble on the stock market?
Well,
Seems a little risky.
some people who support the idea argue that it could actually make the U.S. government's creditworthiness better.
Really?
Their thinking is that if the government shows it can handle and grow these funds well, it could increase confidence in their financial stability.
Okay, I can kind of see how that argument could work,
Yeah.
but it still feels a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, I get that.
So let's say this actually happens and the U.S. launches a sovereign wealth fund.
Okay.
Where would all this money even go?
Well,
What kind of investment opportunities are we talking about here?
one area where we could see a big impact is the stock market. Just imagine a multi-trillion-dollar fund suddenly jumping into the market and buying up stocks.
Wow.
That's a massive amount of money coming in,
Right.
and it would probably drive up demand and could even push stock prices higher.
So this could potentially create like a U.S.-backed wave,
Yeah,
pushing the market upwards.
potentially, yeah.
That sounds like it could be good for investors, right?
It could be. However, we can't forget that investing always comes with risks.
Oh, right.
We have to consider the possibility of market downturns, crashes,
Uh-huh.
or other unexpected things that could affect how the SWF's investments perform.
Okay, that's a good point. And what about the risks for the government?
Yeah.
What happens if they make some bad investments and lose a bunch of money?
Wow.
We're already running a deficit.
Right.
So can we really afford to be taking like big gambles with this?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights how important transparency and accountability are in managing this potential fund.
Okay.
If the SWF isn't managed carefully, it could put more strain on the budget
Right.
and maybe even lead to higher interest rates,
Okay.
because lenders would get more cautious about whether the government can actually repay its debts.
So there's a lot riding on this.
Yeah.
If things go bad, it could affect everything.
Right.
From our own personal investments to how much it costs to borrow money for things like houses and cars.
Exactly. It's a big deal.
It seems like we need to unpack all of this a bit more.
I agree.
There's a lot to consider here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're in uncharted territory with this whole thing.
Yeah.
We've talked about the potential benefits and the risks for the government, and the whole economy.
Right.
But what about the individual investor?
Yeah.
Like if this U.S. sovereign wealth fund actually happens,
Okay.
what does it mean for someone like me who's just trying to
Yeah.
navigate the market and grow their own money?
That's a great question, and it really highlights how important financial literacy is these days. Regardless of what happens with this SWF,
Yeah.
the truth is our economic system is built to reward investors.
Right.
The people who know how to make their money work for them,
Yeah.
those are the ones who are best set up to deal with the ups and downs and build that long-term financial security.
Okay, so you're saying that whether this SWF is a success or a failure,
Yeah,
being an active investor is still the smartest move.
exactly. Think of it this way.
Okay.
If the SWF does push stock prices up,
Yeah.
you're going to want to be invested so you can benefit from those gains.
Right.
And if it doesn't work out the way they planned
Hmm.
and leads to some unexpected problems,
Yeah.
well, having a diverse investment portfolio,
Okay.
that's going to help you reduce those risks.
That makes sense. But for those of us who aren't like seasoned investors already,
Right.
where do we even start?
Yeah.
The whole investing world can feel pretty intimidating.
It doesn't have to be intimidating.
Okay.
The key is to start with education. There are so many resources out there, online books, podcasts, courses, you name it.
Right.
And you can always talk to a financial advisor
Mm-hmm.
who can help you make a plan that's specifically for you
Okay.
based on your goals and how much risk you're comfortable with.
So there's no need to become like a Wall Street expert overnight.
No, not at all.
It's more about taking those first steps
Yeah.
and learning as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't need a ton of money to get started either.
It's good.
Even small, consistent investments can really grow over time,
Okay.
thanks to the power of compounding.
Compounding, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of investing, let's look at some real-world examples of how sovereign wealth funds actually operate.
Right.
Like Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, for instance.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
They've been making some strategic moves lately.
What kind of companies have they been putting their money into?
Well, they've invested billions in companies like Lucid,
Right.
the electric car maker,
Okay.
Uber, the ride-sharing company, and even gaming companies like Activision Blizzard and Electronic Arts.
Wow, so every time someone like orders an Uber
Yeah.
or plays Call of Duty,
Yeah.
they're kind of indirectly helping Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund grow.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's kind of wild to think about.
It is. It really shows how connected global finance is.
Hmm.
What happens in one part of the world can affect businesses and investors everywhere.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about some potential good outcomes,
Right.
but let's go back to the risks for a second.
Okay.
We talked about the possibility of the government making bad investments.
Yeah.
But there's another big thing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. government's track record with managing money.
Yeah.
It's not exactly stellar.
You're not wrong. Given our huge national debt,
Yeah.
it's a valid concern that this potential SWF could just become a money pit
Right.
if it's not managed well.
Exactly. So transparency and accountability are key here.
Absolutely.
We need to be able to see where this money is going
Right.
and how it's being invested.
Exactly. No more shady deals behind closed doors.
Right. It needs to be about strategic investing
Yeah.
for the long-term good of the country,
Mm-hmm.
not about short-sighted political moves.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the potential impact on everyday Americans.
Right.
If the government's creditworthiness takes a hit because of a mismanaged SWF,
Yeah.
we could all end up paying the price
Right.
through higher interest rates on loans and mortgages.
It's not just about dollars and cents.
Right.
It's about trust and confidence
Yeah.
in our government's ability to manage our collective resources responsibly.
Exactly. Well said.
So it seems like this potential U.S. sovereign wealth fund,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
I think that's a fair assessment.
On one hand, it could create a lot of wealth
Mm-hmm.
and help our economy grow in the long run.
Right.
But on the other hand, there are some serious risks involved,
Yeah.
especially with our current financial situation
Mm.
and the need for transparency and accountability.
Absolutely. It's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, we need to approach this with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
Demand transparency from our elected officials
Right.
and hold them accountable for every dollar invested.
Feels like we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, you're right.
It's so complex.
It is.
With so many possible outcomes.
Definitely both good and bad.
And it's because of that complexity
Mm-hmm.
that it's so important for us to be informed and engaged,
Absolutely.
as citizens.
Yeah, we can't just sit back and watch while these huge decisions are being made.
Exactly. We need to be active in shaping our economic future,
Right, not just bystanders.
not just watching from the sidelines.
Exactly. And that's why we want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yes.
What do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Do you see the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund as like a game changer
Yeah.
or a recipe for disaster?
We've talked about the potential benefits and risks,
Right.
but we want to know what you think.
Yeah. Head down to the comments and share your thoughts,
Yes, tell us what you're thinking.
your concerns, your hopes,
Yeah.
even your dreams for the U.S. economy.
Let's have a real discussion about this.
Yeah, because we're all in this together.
Right.
The more we understand about these complicated financial things,
Yeah.
the better we'll be able to deal with the challenges
Yeah.
and take advantage of the opportunities that come up.
So to wrap things up, let's leave you with this question.
Okay.
Will the potential benefits of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund actually outweigh the risks? What will this mean for the future of the U.S. economy?
Yeah,
And most importantly, what will it mean for your own wallet?
that's a good question to think about,
Right?
and one that we'll probably be dealing with for years to come.
It's a big one.
But that's what makes the whole thing so interesting, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The world of finance is always changing,
Yeah.
and we're here to help you make sense of it all.
That's right.
So as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this deep dive with anyone who might find it useful.
The more informed we are, the better choices we can make.
That's right.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Yes, and remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, my friends.